come out. There's 3 in a row, 3 cars. Tennessee, New Jersey, and Maryland.
And the Woodstock Brewery over there is the sportsman animal is doing a really good business. We do a concert here, I don't know if you know that. If you ever like Americana music and singer-songwriters, the website is now flycatmusic.org, but we'll redirect you to go there. But we're doing.
Hey folks, sorry to interrupt. I want to thank you all for coming to the town hall tonight. I'm Supervisor Rob Staley. I want to thank you again for coming here tonight to have this meeting. Pat Ryan, our county executive, has stopped by to answer any questions and give a chat about things that are going on at the county level. And of course, I'm sure you're more than willing to listen to some questions from the audience as we get done. But again, thanks for coming out on this beautiful night. It really is a great day. We had a great dedication ceremony for Mike LaPaglia Bridge. Sorry, I'm tripping over my tongue. Really nice ceremony and well deserved for the LaPaglia family. And look forward to what Mr. Ryan has to say this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, how's everybody doing? This was, the weather gods definitely cooperated to have an awesome day to be out here. And as Supervisor was saying, we started the afternoon at the bridge. And it was a really cool chance to dedicate a facility to somebody that dedicated their whole life to public service, which is something I believe pretty strongly in. So I really appreciate everybody giving up some prime late summer hours to just, not hours, we'll make it minutes instead of hours, to come here and chat. The goal was for me to introduce myself, tell you just a little bit about what we're doing, but primarily to have a discussion, to hear input, feedback, good, bad, ugly, questions. So I'll just start and introduce myself. I see a few people I know, but those I don't. I'm Pat. I grew up in Kingston. My family's been in Ulster County for 5 generations, and we actually just welcomed my wife and I the 6th generation. We had a baby a month ago. So forgive the bags under my eyes. But so far, he's doing really well. Eating, sleeping, pooping, all the important baby things. So, other than that, my personal background, I learned from my parents. The number one thing they taught me was this idea of public service, as I talked about earlier, that we have a responsibility in whatever way each of us can to give back and be part of the community that you belong to, however that may manifest for each individual person. So for me, that was going to West Point. I then served 2 combat deployments in Iraq as an Army officer, and then I came back and started a tech company trying to get better, mostly software and other technology out to our troops that were deployed overseas, which was a big challenge we faced. So that was up till the last few years, and then I really missed being in more direct public service. So that lured me back into running for office. I've now been the county executive for about 2.5 months. I love the job. We're working hard. Just to give you a very quick sense of some of the things we've been able to work on so far, the opioid epidemic is one of the things I just hear every single place I go, and we're ramping up a bunch of different initiatives there. So on the prevention side and the treatment side, we just secured $3 million in federal funding just for Ulster County. That'll be over the next 3 years, and the idea is plug the gaps in kind of the current. There's a lot of gaps in the current treatment and prevention system, so that's just ramping up, and we're really excited about that. We also made our sheriff's department made a pretty significant arrest last week of unfortunately a drug dealer who dealt a lethal dose of fentanyl to a young woman from Plattekill, and it's the first time ever in the history of Ulster County that a drug dealer was charged with criminally negligent homicide. So we're actors that are bringing the drugs. We're also part of a class action lawsuit. Ulster County is against the big pharma companies, so that's playing out. So we're doing a lot there. And then the other thing that I'm really passionate about, I know a lot of people here are, is protecting the environment, which I think is absolutely one of our both an economic opportunity, but also just a moral obligation to protect, what we've been handed down. And so the big thing we're doing at the county level, trying to lead by example, we're going to move our entire energy production for the county to 100% renewable by 2030. We're about 20% right now. We're by the end of probably next year, we'll get to 40%. We're building another solar array up in Saugerties on an old brownfield site. So taking a previously unusable piece of land and trying to make something good out of it. So that's another thing we're working on. And then last but definitely not least, everything we do, every decision that I and my team are making, wanting to be good stewards of your all's taxpayer dollars, continuing to hold the line on the taxes. We have not had an increase in the last 10 years. I'm committed to continuing to do that in terms of county tax burden. I know how hard it is, whether you're a young person, someone retired or retiring, or in between. So that's something really important to me in everything that we do. So I'll stop rambling now. The real goal is to try to hear what's going on from you all and kind of be out there on the ground. Going back to my Army Intel officer days, you got to be out there to see what's going on. So this is the 11th town hall that I've had across the 24 towns of the county so far. We're going to do one in every town as soon as we can. So again, thank you all for being here, and I'd love to answer any questions, give more detail about things. We've got millions of things going on across the county, but would love to open it up and hear any questions or feedback. And feel free to be brutally honest. We like that. So. Anybody? Ma'am?
Yes, I'm Madeline Steele. I live in the Woodland Valley, and I just wondered, how are you proceeding with sex education for teenagers in Ulster County? Since venereal diseases are rampant right now, if children get sexually, if they get sexually oriented, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to prevent sexually transmitted diseases, and they are our future, because if they get chlamydia, they will not be able to reproduce, and they will not be able to pay our Social Security. So I like to look at the long term.
Yeah, that's the long game right there.
That's the long, and also, my question is, how are you? We had gone many years ago when Spitzer, the day Spitzer was there, the day Spitzer went out, client number 9, we were there in Albany, hoping that he was going to have sex education. And David Patterson came in, and the whole thing just died. So I think it's going to have to be a county-wide initiative to teach children about sex education. We all are here because of sex, and so what's Ulster County going to do?
Wow, that is the first time I've gotten that question. But no, so one thing to just make sure everybody knows, we at the county level, we have a pretty limited involvement in education policy. It's mostly state. So we don't, in terms of actual school systems,
Right.
We don't set a lot of curriculum or things like that.
Is there any way you can influence the state?
Definitely. So, I mean, the biggest thing I'm influencing the state is to get more funding for our schools, obviously, and both academics, but also all the kind of extracurriculars and things that have slowly started to just
Like
get
the
cut
sports
and cut
and the music and the art?
Exactly. But we do have, under our health department at the county, we do a lot of kind of public health initiatives. So one of the big things we just did was a tick-borne disease and Lyme disease awareness and prevention campaign. I had not thought about an STD awareness campaign, but we can look at that and see kind of how we balance that.
Yeah. Syphilis and gonorrhea are just going through the roof, and young people are getting these diseases. With Planned Parenthood closing down, where do they go? Where they don't have to tell their parents. They need to be educated so that we have them for the future. I wouldn't want some young person to say, if I'd only known and gotten these, these venereal warts that I wouldn't be able to reproduce, or that, you know, I would have thought about it twice, but they're kids and they don't think
Right.
about it twice.
Yeah.
So we have to think about it for them. You
Yeah,
have to
we
think
will-
about it for them.
We'll look at that, and I'll make sure we, where's Dan? Dan from my team is taking notes, so if we can grab your info and I can follow up with you on it too.
Good, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Dan?
Joyce Grant, Town Clerk and Town Information Officer. Are we the only town in your jurisdiction that does not have cell service?
Yeah, so,
We want to know if it's in your power to either approach Verizon or to do something. Unfortunately, we're surrounded by mountains,
yeah,
owned by DEC. We can't put towers on them unless it suits their needs, like in the Adirondacks.
right,
So we get that end of the stick.
yeah,
So we need cell service. It's very important for our emergency services. I don't know if you know about the accident in Big Indian last year with the
Yeah.
police officers.
yeah,
Our ambulance people had to walk to a house to use a phone.
yeah.
This
And-
is critical. We have seniors, we have people, accidents all the time. This corridor is dangerous.
Yep.
You know the spiel. We need cell service. What can you do?
Cell
Help
and,
us.
Internet.
and internet,
And
right,
broadband.
and
Well,
broadband.
yes, of course.
Yeah,
But
so-
the cell start would be nice to have some towers.
Let's start with,
Specifically Verizon, since Verizon's in Boyceville and as well as up by Bel Air.
yeah, so,
I'm sorry, I have to enter it. I live up the Hollow, Broadside Hollow, and all the way there, it's dead.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
Better,
just anecdotally, just obviously
And
today,
for emergency, and I'll quickly say that last winter, when we had, not this past, but the one before, when we had the big storms and all the lights were out and all that, and I tried to reach people
yeah,
for my, because,
scary.
no, our house was blocked with trees that had fallen, and I couldn't reach anybody to come and help us
Yeah,
for 3 days. We needed something here.
yeah,
Well, the other thing is with the electric company and all that, they're converting over now, go on our app to see when the outages are. We can't go on the app. And at the Time Warner phones, most of our seniors go with the triple play, which is cheaper. The phones go out right away and they think we have cell towers to use our cell phones and we don't.
Right.
So we're being forgotten
yeah,
and we don't like it.
yeah, I don't like
We
it.
really don't like it.
You're, oh, go ahead, man.
Angela Galindo in Phoenicia, and it's really a sad state of affairs when our EMS is asking people to let them know if they have the network extended to their home so they could slow down to contact the hospital en route.
Yeah, no, that's unacceptable. I mean, at that point, it's
This is
A
an
public
emergency,
safety,
this is a
exactly.
public safety emergency.
yeah. And so, it's frankly, you're not the only ones, but it's one of the worst in the county. I mean, I was up in Denny and Hardenburg, they have similar challenges. A lot of our communities further west obviously have those challenges. But I think because of the weird geography combined with all the limitations of the watershed and where we can and can't do things, Shandaken's in a particularly tough spot. So the biggest thing that we can do there is, both on the broadband and cell, is one, capture as much as we can information of the impacts of this. So one of the things we're going to look at is how can we get out and either house by house or at least have stories like the one you shared, man, with the real life implications of the lack. And then ultimately it is a state public service commission level. I mean, that's the official answer is the public service commission at the state is the one that has the leverage to put the pressure on the Verizons or the Spectrums or whatever they call themselves this year before they do another big merger. But we kind of know how that's gone in the past, and we continue to be the forgotten ones. I think the biggest thing I can do, to be candid, is just scream and shout from the voice that I have up to Albany and try to marshal as many of you as are willing to sort of be part of that. I think that's kind of the point we're at. We've tried a bunch of carrots and incentives to get people here, and it doesn't work. We now have to have sticks and actually start using that against folks. On broadband, we have to push for the Public Service Commission to make broadband internet a public utility. It's still not legally a public utility in 2019, which is absurd. So that's a specific thing we can lobby at kind of every level for, and that I've been advocating for too. But it's unacceptable. I agree with you. And I wish there was like the only quick thing that I think we could do, we are building a series of 911 towers across the county to upgrade our 911 resiliency first responder network, which might address some of those concerns. One of the things we're going to look at is, can we add cell panels to those towers? I don't know the answer on that definitively yet, but that could be, like, if we show the willingness to do some of the foundational investment as a government in the tower, we might be able to help incentivize telecoms to throw up some panels, but we don't know that for sure, but that's one of the things we're looking at as a quicker fix.
Can you make them Frankenpines?
Oh, yeah.
Because that way,
the fake ones.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't upset the community, because we are such an environmental place,
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
could hide, they look like pine trees, but they're called Frankenpines.
I didn't know that was the official name. Sir, you were,
I live probably less than 2 miles from the cell tower, and I get no cell service. I don't get really radio either. There are other ways of delivering cell service. You can have small transmitters built into businesses, people's homes, fire towers.
mesh network.
You could persuade the Spectrum or whatever to offer free internet cell to any home that's willing to install a transmitter.
Yep.
If there are ideal locations that could provide service to a neighborhood.
Yep.
Towers really don't work here,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Okay.
But there are other ways to do it, but you need to be very creative about it.
Yeah, that's if you're a technical expert on that, we may follow up with you. I've heard beginnings of discussion about like mesh networks and this idea rather than the central
And
tower.
in Phoenicia, you can get connections a little bit, some of the
Yeah.
businesses offer it.
Right.
We could make it bring out a whole campaign of urging people to have transmitters in better locations and
Yep.
maybe giving them free cell service in exchange for being willing to do that.
There are some towns and cities in rural parts of the country doing this now. One of the things that we did, that I did last month, was stood up, we're calling an innovation team. It's a small, 2 people right now. But what we're trying to look at is best practices from across the country that we can bring into the county. I'll have them look at whether there's some models there that we could maybe replicate or bring to the telecoms.
Are there other counties that have similar problems, towns and other
Oh,
counties?
yeah. I mean, this is,
You could work with other county supervisors to
yeah,
go to Albany, to the Public Service Commission and say, no, whack, whack, whack.
exactly. And it is this, I think a lot of times the squeaky wheel, gets the grease in these, so we have to figure out how to mobilize our voice around that. And, Margaretville started to be pretty effective in some of the things they're starting their own kind of little local regional MTC operation, so that's a model, I think, for success. Brian?
I just want to stay with the technical point that David raised a moment ago. You said that there was an upgrade in progress, EMS, countywide EMS upgrade. Yep. Do you happen to know if their transmission systems are using are in that sort of 70 to 90 foot tower range, that small tower range?
I don't know.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I remember many years ago, Kathy, you were involved with Adam Navy. You guys came up with a plan to cover 90% of Shandaken's geography, 90% of the homes, with something like 7 or 8 towers in that small range, right?
Yeah, if you place the towers along 28, and we were looking at libraries and firehouses, then you get the 28 corridor covered, and you can also put them at the entrances to the hollows, so they'll go some distance up the hollows. That was a plan that would have provided 90–95% coverage.
So these are smaller towers, more of them?
The larger towers actually get shadowed by the mountains, which is the point that Dave was making.
So I don't know the answer, which I don't like, but I'll admit when I don't. We'll find out.
It's fascinating. If there is a countywide EMS upgrade that's beginning now, there may be a way to integrate it from the start.
Yeah, we have an awesome director of emergency operations, who Legislator Nolan knows well, Steve Peterson. It's a state grant, so we should give a little credit to the state. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're going to get over the next few years to upgrade 911 resiliency. So we will find out, and it's early enough that I don't know the parameters of the grant, but if we could affect it, we'll look at that. Thank you. Sir.
Slight dovetail on it, just a couple
things to throw out for your screaming and yelling and squeaky wheels is that we have the whitewater tubing here, and there have been several deaths over the last decade or two. We have Route 28 is consistently ranked as one of the more dangerous highways in terms of fatalities. And we also have, because of the wilderness area in Catskill Park, we have a lot of people hiking off it in trails, and we do have rattlesnakes, we do have falls. So we have a number of risk factors that magnify just the background risk factor of accidents happen and stuff along this area. So we really do need to have emergency.
Yeah, and I think the public safety case is the most compelling case for us, especially in the wake of, you know, natural disasters that unfortunately, you know.
But where I was going to go with that also is that in terms of one of my concerns is the economic viability going forward a decade or two.
Yeah.
As I've been involved with groups that try to form nonprofit boards, and we look at various different roles and can't get recruiting candidates, we're slowly aging out population. You run out of good candidates who would be willing to serve on this, or who can head up that, or it's always the same name of people. Volunteer fire departments depend on people who are physically active and viable.
Yeah.
And if we become overly reliant on tourism, so that we don't have a year-round viable population support basic services and schools, et cetera, it's going to create a vicious circle.
Absolutely.
And we'll have another drain. And so, I mean, cell service is important because it's one of the things that's, we have one of the most beautiful parts of the country, and we're not far from major metropolitan areas like New York City. So I think that the Catskills are the future would be one of the pitches I would make. I mean, this is a place that people can live, especially with climate change.
Yep.
And if we can get basic infrastructure that would support people moving out of cities and running businesses here, this is a wonderful place to live, and it's getting better all the time, and climate change is making our temperatures are a little bit more moderate, we don't have terrible forest fires, we don't have major droughts usually, et cetera, et cetera. We're just a little bit, sea level's not gonna get to us for quite a while. So I would like to see a way of pitching the Catskills for the future, and to try to bring in an economy it's like we need a stool, at least a stool, not a four-legged chair to support the economy. Tourism is wonderful, it's been growing, but we need something that has a year-round population.
And if you look at so there's some, on the surface, encouraging numbers that just came out about employment in the county. Ulster County grew, I think it was 1,200 and something jobs over the last year on year. But 75% of them were tourism jobs. And if you look at the wages and the benefits, and as you said, tourism is important, but it can't be the major driver. You increasingly just can't afford to live on oftentimes the wages related to that, or the sensitivity to revenues around seasonal businesses and so on and so forth. So absolutely one of my priorities is to figure out, how do I do some of the things I did. For example, the company I ran, unfortunately, was not here. It was based in Virginia, and we took veterans coming home from serving. In 6 weeks, we got them certified in tech coding skills that allowed them to earn between $60,000 and $90,000 a year, bypassing kind of frankly, the more traditional kind of college routes that increasingly lead to debt and not a lot of income. So trying some of those kind of programs, skills training programs in the county, given our proximity to the city, I think we could start luring more tech, definitely clean energy and clean tech pieces, as well as I actually think going back to ag, going back to being a place that produces super high quality craft, both raw or agricultural products, but also, everything from beers to high-end foods that we're then marketing locally, regionally, into the city. Those are some of the growth areas I'd love to see us lean into.
Before we get off the cell phone topic, is there a method for you to organize this information that you need to wage the argument, and is there a way that we can help you gather that information?
I'll organize it.
So
Who do we write to? Who do we
Organize
call?
it. Yeah, who do we-
So one of the places I've pointed to is town of Olive is starting to do a little bit of this work. they've been going around and actually looking at the list that Spectrum claims that they've been upgrading versus they going door to door and actually checking, do you have this upgrade? And they found several dozen discrepancies there. So at a certain degree, I mean, it's a good amount, it's a decent amount of work, but having that actual layer of data of reality versus promise is super powerful. And then when we can talk and think more about this, but ultimately it'd be, an organizing effort where we would either, maybe we get some folks from the Public Service Commission to come down, or we mobilize anybody that'd be willing to go up to Albany, and we sort of request / demand a meeting with Public Service Commission and others to say, look, this is unacceptable, here's some of these stories. So I think it's both some stories and kind of anecdotal examples, but then to the degree that, and we could talk about how a county could help here, gathering that information of the gaps of coverage. That's what I would see as the next step.
Yeah, I would think even just how many seniors are living in homes without cell service, and how many accidents have occurred on roads that have no cell service, and.
Yeah.
Like, we have our mom living with us now, and she's 84, and it's just like there's another layer of, she wears one of those mobile alerts, so if she falls, but it only works with a cell phone. It connects the system itself, so she moved from Florida, she moved in with us 6 months ago, but there's this other layer of, we have to work, we work full-time, and it's like another layer of, if she falls, that's not gonna call anyone, because it can't connect to a cell line, so there's just a lot of things like that that affect our everyday lives in addition, so there's a domino effect of when you have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And at the other end of life, we have kids up here who don't have the access to the internet.
Right.
And one of our neighbor's sons goes down to the village and sits in front of the library.
Can you
To do
imagine
homework,
that,
to
in
do
the
homework.
wintertime having to do their homework like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, it's